What's up, DAW Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the DAW. And in this week's episode, we have Austin freaking Collins, also known as Au5. The king has returned, and he did not disappoint. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Au5's system of masterfully weaving between the art and the business side. We're also going to talk about the importance of having a story-based brand or making story-based art. We're also going to talk about walking into your power and following your intuition when creating your music and doing it with confidence. And finally, we're going to take all those topics and bring them all together and show how all of them applied in Au5 making his latest EP, Earthwave. Which, by the way, with a little bit of convincing, we got Au5 to give us a free sample pack from one of the songs from Earthwave. It's called Heat. Sounds like this. You can get that free download down in the description, or you can head on over to dawnation.net/heat. By the way, if you're brand new to Behind the DAW, my name is Wyatt Troy, and this is a podcast where we interview music producers, singers, songwriters, music industry experts, and everyone else on that spectrum on an emotional, philosophical, branding, marketing, and music business basis. Basically, everything you need to know for your music career except the technical side. We cover all of that over on our In the DAW series. Go check that out. And if you like this episode, then boy, oh boy, do I got some noise for you. Noise? I got noise. Nice noise. What am I trying to say? News. I have news for you. Au5, the guy that we did the podcast with, has a full sound design masterclass. It is his definitive flagship sound design masterclass where he's going to teach you his sound design system. We actually talk about it a lot in this episode. Stay tuned for that. But this is where you can learn how to make an unlimited amount of sounds, rhythms, textures, basses, blasters, leads, anything that you can think of. It's the same system that he has used for his entire music career for the last 15 years. He's released over 200 songs with this system. So if you're interested in something like that, go ahead and check the link down in the description or head on over to dawnation.net/School of Bass. But DAW Nation, with all that out of the way, let's go behind the DAW with Au5. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Behind the DAW. And in this episode, it's been a very long-awaited episode. It's been several years since we've had him on the show. Mr. Au5 is back in the show. How you doing today, man?
What's up, man? I'm doing very well. Quite tired, pretty exhausted from a lot of busy stuff this week, but I feel good, and it's really nice to be back on here too. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, dude. You have had a busy week. You're about to have an EP come out with Ophelia, and we're absolutely going to talk about that a little bit later. But before we get to that, before we go down those rabbit holes, Mr. 5, what is one of the worst decisions that you've made for your music career?
I will say probably thinking too much about it. Thinking too much about if I'm doing the right thing, what I should do, who I should be listening to. Because I think as artists, really, like, we are the core, we are the source of the art, of the expression. Like, it's supposed to be something that is authentic and unique to us. And I think the more that we can trust ourselves, then the more we can trust our intuition, the less we have to think and intellectualize stuff. And the more we can just go off of our gut. And really, I find that doing that yields the best results, not in just the creation, but also like direction, talking with and networking with other people. I mean, I feel like there have been so many times where I have opportunities to connect with people, and then I'll think about like, maybe this is not going to be a right fit, or like thinking about like basically making stuff up before I even throw myself into the picture. It's like, I think the best thing to do is actually act first and then course correct, as opposed to try to get it perfect on the first shot. Like, you waste so much time and energy doing that sort of thing.
Oh boy, Austin. I can hear DAW Nation just, it's resonating with them. I've heard many people talk about this before. Can you give us an example of a time when you thought too much? You should have acted, you should have just went for it. And can you give us a time when you didn't think too much and you went for it as soon as it came to you and it worked out really, really well?
I'll give a broad example. Getting advice from people who aren't actually artists, from people who don't actually understand and see you, but rather see you as an asset or something. People like management teams and labels are ones that you that are prone to this and that you'll find resistance against often. And also sometimes show promoters too. For instance, back in the day, I was, and I've always been pretty diverse with the highly technical and heavy music and the really like melodic and emotional stuff. And I always kind of blend those together and found ways to intertwine them. But about a decade ago, there was not really that kind of middle ground that is common now. Like melodic bass was much more of a niche thing. Color bass was not even a term that was coined yet. That made it tough for me, especially as a growing touring artist, to find shows. There were not a lot of talent buyers who were confident in or really understood what I had to, what I was expressing through my music. And one of the things I ran into was I kind of had to I was posed with a choice. Like, what route am I going to take? Am I going to do this melodic stuff, like more housey, trancey music? Or am I going to do the hard, heavy dubstep? Because if I'm both, then to them, I'm really neither. I can't really be trusted that I can pull a crowd because there was not a defined audience for what I was doing at the time. The answer was really simple. Like, I do this for a reason because I love both, and this is my taste. This is my style, and I know that if I just choose one, I'm gonna be resentful. I'm gonna be frustrated that I can't bring the whole scope of my inner world into the outer world. So I just said, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to choose a side. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. And if I'm not playing shows, then that's fine. I'm going to put my energy elsewhere. And that's what I did. And inevitably, I think it worked in my favor in the end. It's been a slower burn probably than it would have been. That could have very well been something that boxed me into a corner or pigeonholed me if I let it.
I'm kind of having an existential crisis right now, just thinking about what my life would have been like if you didn't do that. If you would have caved to what what we call the business side, if you would have caved to that and just followed this logically makes sense, this is the business side, I'm just going to pick a route and I'm just going to stick with it and I'm not going to fuse these two together. Oh my gosh, how much more terrible, how much worse off our industry and our culture would be if Au5 didn't do that. Like, I can't even I
think a lot of the value that I've brought has had to do with kind of being the outcast for the time being, and in ways still, but just kind of trusting that path and trusting what I love doing and creating what I love creating. And yeah, it has been lucrative. And I think those kind of external pressures, you'll get that from labels too. You pitch a song to a bunch of labels and they don't take it, and they may be more specific. Some may be more specific of why not than others. Often it's pretty general, just like this isn't really what we're going for. But we're still open to hearing what you have to pitch. Over time, especially, can really erode like an artist. And an artist needs to be sensitive in order to kind of pull the subtlety, the subtle energies from the ether to create something that's real and profound. And that sensitivity also makes you prone to criticism and critique. And especially if it's a label or someone or an entity that you look up to that is criticizing or rejecting you in any way, you need to not be affected by that. But it's like, okay, how do you be resilient without like numbing yourself from that kind of criticism or sensitivity, while still being open, like while still being sensitive and still being an artist that can create authentically without these external pressures like diluting you.
And this is why we have you on the show. This is why I've been anticipating this for so long. That was a fantastic answer, Austin. And Donation, make sure to stay all the way to the end, because at the end, we're actually going to be asking Austin the opposite to that question, which is what is one of the best decisions that he has made for his music career. Okay, you just opened a whole can of worms. We're not planning to talk about this. We're absolutely going to talk about this now. But at the core of what you were just discussing, right? If we kind of we see all the smoke, and I think what you just brought up was smoke. But if we follow the smoke back to the core, back to the fire, the actual where the tension resides, is, in my mind at least, and maybe this is still smoke, or maybe we are at the fire, but in my mind, it is, here is this art that you want to create. Here is this journey you want to take people on, this thing that you want to bring to fruition, that you feel it's intuitive, it's in your soul, and you feel this driving force to create this whatever this is, this art, right? And on the other side, there is the need to get it out to the masses, to get it out to the people, to bring other people along, because there is a massive enjoyment of people connecting with your art, resonating with your art, on that side, as well as you making money for your living, and so on, so paying the other people that are on your team, and all the stuff, the business side. If we want to whittle it down into words, there's the art side and there's the business side, and there is this tension there, because the art is very subjective and the business is very objective most of the time. I'm using generalities. Austin, help me out. It's
Generalities?
Thank you, sir.
I don't know. Sounds right.
I don't know. I'm from Denver. We don't say that. And so it would be unwise for us to say, just pick one or the other. Just always make creative decisions or always make business decisions, right? There's plenty of instances that we can bring up where people just go hard on the business side and their music is soulless. Their brand is soulless. It is not like, it's like eating fast food, right? And then we can go clear to the other side. I don't know what is the consequence of going so far into the creative realm that you don't, there's no business, so you don't find a following, you don't make a living, is that, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. You're ungrounded. You completely detach from earth, and you're your own disconnected, essentially. You're in your own world entirely. And that can also be a dangerous place to be as well. Yeah.
And I feel very qualified for asking you this question, because we have been working together for, when was the first In the DAW? 2017. That was almost 10 years ago. Don't tell anybody. Don't say that out loud. That makes us sound way older than we actually are. But for the last 10 years, I have seen you. I've seen you masterfully weave in between the creative and the business. You know what I mean? Like, you're the whole reason DAW Nation has courses, because you took the leap of faith. You know what I mean? So clearly you're willing to wander into the business realm. You know what I mean? And so I feel like you are a very qualified source to talk about this balance of art and business and marketing. And anyways, that was a very long bridge to get to the, how do you balance those two? How do you masterfully play the creative and play the businessman?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is something, I'm going to be honest about it, I'm still figuring that out too. And I think through that process of figuring it out, like, it's also a personal thing to me. This is not just specific to my career, but also personal life. And what I mean by that is, for instance, I think ultimately how to bridge the two is finding some kind of system that works for you and your temperament and your tendencies and the things that you like doing and that fulfill you. Systematize that in a way that does not degrade or diminish what is true and authentic to you, but packages it in a way that is more understandable and accessible and can translate easier to an audience. Because ultimately, the business of music is, I believe, in the connection between the artist and the audience, because you're providing value, you're providing a service to the masses. And so it's transactional at that point. So the better that you can do that, the more you can get your name out there, but also it's not just like blind promotion, just pushing or force feeding stuff on people. You want to make people feel like they've discovered something that is special, something that resonates with them. On one end, you can look at like what's trending, and you can try to like emulate and predict what people want. You can kind of be like, I want this kind of audience, and then try to make stuff to gravitate that. I think that doing that is really no better than just kind of like an exercise. I think the real way is to give yourself permission and time and space to explore that which you really, really like and really resonates with you, that you know is the core of you and your fulfillment in your art. And then I think once you have like a solid set of values, or like a manifesto that you can return to, and it's like, this doesn't feel like it's distracting me or making me, it doesn't feel like an obligation. This feels like it's aligning me more with who I am and what I'm doing. Then you have a foundation to build a system on top of, because then you have something that you can use to reflect on and think like, okay, I'm going to take these other ideas that could potentially bridge my art with the masses and see if that aligns with your values or your manifesto. And if so, then I'd say, yeah, you're on the right track there, because you're not removing anything that's true to you or authentic to you.
You said something. You said something so well, and I don't think I wrote down what you actually said, but I wrote down what I heard, okay? And what I wrote down was the system. You said the S word. I'm so proud of you. We love the S word here. The system that allows you to connect your art to other people is what we call business. That's what I heard. And that is insane, because if we say the word business, if we say the word marketing to our community, oh my gosh, it's like pulling teeth. It is the grossest, nastiest, sleaziest thing that you can say in our community. But when you put it like that, it is the system that allows you to connect your art to other people. That takes so much steam out of the kettle. That takes so much fire out of the fireplace, my guy. Like, it is. Oh, that was beautiful. That will be my first tattoo when you come. We can go get that, okay? That would be great.
Cool, yeah. The way that I describe it, it kind of depolarizes it. Like, it really kind of emphasizes that, okay, well, if we're perceiving the business as like gross, then maybe it isn't actually business at the core that is the problem, but the structures that we're so familiar with in the present day music industry that are kind of messed up.
I couldn't agree more. Something that came to my mind when you were describing this, right? Because you were talking about, you have to find a system that works with your temperament, that works with your brand, that works with your art. And so what I foresee a lot of people going through is that the list of things that people can do to fulfill that business side is enormous. It is huge. It is. We do not have enough time in the next month to go through all the things that you could do to fulfill the business side with your art. All the different strategies, all the different frameworks and systems and all the stuff, right? But what I foresee is people, they're only familiar with like 3 or 4 things on that list, and they don't like the 3 or 4 things on that list. And so therefore they say the whole list sucks. And what you're saying is, no. Find out as many things as you can on the list, much more than just those 4 things that you think are nasty. And once you you have this big comprehensive list, then pick the things that fit your temperament the best and that fit you. Am I hearing that correctly?
Essentially, yeah. And I believe that finding those things is really just a process of being open and exploring and being willing to fail. Like, failure is not bad. It's learning. You're teaching yourself through the process of trying new things and missing the mark that you may expect. Over time, I think of it like persistence is superior to perfection. You do not have to be perfect. No one's perfect. No one expects you to be perfect. We're our own worst critics. And the only way that you can actually know what is the best and healthiest and authentic, most authentic to you is by being imperfect and exploring different avenues, different styles, different brands, different like people and teams living in different places, new software, new, like, you know, trying new plugins, or even doing the complete opposite, like throwing yourself into something that forces you to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Because I find that, like, when you're in a routine over and over, if you're in the same place and same studio, or like you're doing the same routine over and over every day, we start to we inevitably box ourselves in. It makes it harder to be open to creative ideas. I find when I'm traveling, or if I'm like sleep deprived, or like, you know, if I'm kind of on the fringe of my comfort zone, that's when I find myself making more bold creative decisions and going with it. And that has led to happy accidents. I mean, like, I think there is inspiration at every moment available to us at arm's reach. But we have to realize that we have to believe, for one, that it exists for us to reach out and grab it. If we don't believe it exists, then there's not going. But what are we going to be reaching for, or why would we be reaching in the first place? You know, we're just kind of in this box of darkness, and it doesn't, you know, we believe that the walls are this close and that there's really nothing else in the box. But it's like, well, if we're stepping outside of that comfort zone, so to speak, I don't think this is the best analogy, but like, if you're in a dark room, you can believe yourself, you can convince yourself that, oh, this place is, there's nothing in here. Or it's smaller than it actually is, and I shouldn't walk around because I might bump into something. But actually, for one, you're probably not going to get hurt if you're in a dark room. And that is the way to feel out what's actually there that you have yet to discover. I think discovery, like exploration and discovery, those things, especially, I'm speaking for myself, but I do believe that this is universal, because we see this in children. Children are inherently creative and explorative, and they have fun and find fulfillment in trying things out. Exploration and discovery, I think, is inherent in the human psyche, and it's something that we kind of get either shamed or feared out of us through judgment or traumatic experiences. And that can really prevent us from seeing that there are possibilities there that we're not taking because of subconscious resistances, traumas, or shame that we haven't like processed or allowed ourselves to overcome in order to trust ourselves in the ways that we need to really be creative and to really just be healthy and fulfilled psychologically.
In the spirit of talking about exploration and trying new things, especially things that are very intriguing to you, this reminds me of clear back in 2019. We were in Hatch, Utah, you and I, and we were filming the Serum Masterclass. And we took a break. We were eating some steaks. It was lovely. And we started having a conversation about potentially moving the Au5 brand into more of a story-based brand. There's a main character, there's a world, there's a story, there's conflict, there's an antagonist, and so on and so forth, right? And you seemed thrilled with it. That has been slow kicking in your mind. We've had many conversations about that over the year. I'm not dropping any lore bombs. I'm not spoiling anything right now, so everyone just, calm down. But I think this applies with what you were just talking about, because, and I think this would be very, very good. Here is this concept that you were intrigued with. that you saw that something inside of you, there was a spark, right? Ooh, a story. How would I apply that? What would that look like? What would that sound like? Can you give us more information to that? Because I think this is a nice, real hard example of here's this thing that you were intrigued by and that you were exploring and you didn't fear it, but you've moved into it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you bringing that up really got me thinking about like, what could be the, I guess, fictional mythos around what Au5 is. I mean, it's a mystery to me, and it has been, but so is life, and so is just living, And basically, I think that got me thinking about how different is real life than like a mythological story. Like if Au5 had if there was a book that was written about the main character of whatever is in the Au5 world, what would that look like? That really got me thinking for a while, for several years and counting. But what it did for me was kind of let me take a step outside of myself and my like day-to-day experience as identifying as Austin and think about like, well, how can I view this like more of third person? How can I like what kind of themes or like archetypes are emerging naturally in my life and in my music and what I'm doing? And for me, I think that was really the start of like it was one phase of many subsequent phases of kind of like a crystallization period of the brand, of the Au5 brand. And to me, just like the idea of there being a story behind something is inspiring in itself. It's like, now okay, sure, I'll write it, but I also am going to have to discover it. And for me, like exploring different concepts that I gravitate towards already, like sci-fi stuff, mythological stuff, esoteric stuff, I'm realizing like, whoa, I'm already like exploring these kind of things in my own life. I'm already integrating these things in my own personal life. It kind of created a space, a mental space for me to get a little more grandiose or dramatic or even potentially a little delusional about who I am and what I'm doing and my purpose here. And I think we kind of have to, like, life is really what we make it. It is a reflection of our beliefs. That's what I believe. That's what I believe at the core. It's a reflection of our beliefs. And I don't think it's a harmful thing to entertain. Maybe we are more mystical or supernatural than what society makes us believe or impresses upon us. Through that process, I have been writing a story, and it has been informing a lot of the music that I've been making, particularly over the past year with Earthwave, which is the EP that I'm about to... It will have been out by the time this podcast is released. But yeah, that is something that I don't think I would have leaned into so far, into like this lore, into this world building that was created without your prompts of what is the Au5 story? Or is there a myth behind this? And yeah, so for one, thank you for that spark. You planted that seed and it was ready to, it's raining. It's been raining.
We got an entire Au5 forest going on now from that one seed. As you were talking and explaining your intrigue with that concept of basically, what do we call this? Having a story-based brand. I hate watering it down to that finite of a term, but having story-based art, is that better?
I think that's a fair way to describe it. Yeah.
Okay,
let's roll with it.
Yeah, so having story-based art, I think one of the intrigue with that is regardless of what genre, if you're a lyricist, you sing, you rap, you do whatever, right? At the core of all the different types of music and where you resonate the most is that you are a creator. You are bringing into existence something that did not exist before, right? Or you're taking other things that were in existence, and then you're forming something new from them, right? You're taking your experiences that have existed, you're forming something new. You're taking your thoughts that have existed, and you're forming something new, right? And I think the reason why having story-based art is just the natural next step to that is that you are kind of stepping into more and more of the role of the creator, because not only are you making this wonderful sounding song now, you are literally creating a world and the characters inside of that world and the problems inside of that world and the solutions inside of that world and the chaos and the euphoria inside of that world. It is literally like it is the next big upgrade to creating art. Would you agree with that statement?
I do. Yeah. And I have a perspective on this. I think outside of the creative space, we are still creators of our own lives. We have identities, and we make our own story of who we are and what we do in our lives, and whether it is good or bad. I mean, like, if you're like, I have nothing going for me, I'm like, I believe I'm a loser and there's no story behind it. That's a very solid premise for your story. Like, that already is something. Like, you kind of can't avoid it. And so I think for me, taking my experiences, all of the things that I inherently have experienced, which influence what I create and what I explore, like taking a step back, me making music, even if I'm just like throwing paint at a wall, like getting completely abstractive, not thinking that there's any meaning or purpose behind this, all of these actions that I'm taking and that I'm doing are actually influenced by everything that I've experienced in my entire life. Who I am, whether I like it or not, is built upon how the experiences that I've had in my life shape my mind and shape my emotions, what I'm responsive to, what resonates with me, what's dissonant with me, and also my physiology too. Because the decisions that we make in our physical bodies, change the form of it. You can get more methodical with that, and you can make something that's abstract and then retroactively try to make sense of it. And for me, I've done that for pretty much all of my music. I find that going into producing with too much of an intention, kind of like going back to what we were saying about like marketing and business, if we're too focused on a specific goal, we're actually going to find more resistance. And I think the authenticity actually comes from thinking less and feeling more. And feeling more could just be making random sounds, just doing some sound design, but being receptive to the natural chaos that arises, to be inspired by that. And then when we take a step back, when we're done with that, we take a step back, we have this structure, whether it be a song or a sound or an image or a story that we can derive meaning from. So it sounds like I'm getting tangential, but what I'm trying to loop back to is when we've created a lot of things, when we've explored a lot of things, that inherently is a reflection of our own life and our own experiences. And we can derive meaning from that in hindsight. With deriving that meaning, we can turn that into a story. We can glorify that and make that into something. We can give it more meaning than what we see on the surface. And by doing that, we can create this perpetual sort of like refining of what our own personal story is in our own voice, in our own flavor, with our own tastes. And for me, creating, even if I'm like this Au5 mythos story, this world that I've been creating, it's dynamic. It is constantly changing as I'm constantly changing, exploring new things, wanting to like bring this into the mix. This feels more resonant with like what I've been vibing with, removing some things that don't feel like are relevant to me anymore. But regardless, I have this feeling this mental world that is dynamic and evolving, but it has an energy now because I've been cultivating it. I've been focusing, revering it. Internally. And that has created a mental space that I can go to, kind of like it's like a sanctuary for me in a sense that I can return to, that I can continue to draw inspiration from. In a sense, it's kind of like a reflection of like, there's a parallel between that and also like what we were talking about with like having like a manifesto or like an ethos that you can come back to. That becomes the foundation on the emotional level that you can use to springboard new ideas from. And I think for me, having that mental world that I've been building, even if it's not explicitly like written out and publicized, it grounds me.
The big punchline with everything that you just said is that even though creating these worlds, creating these big stories within your music is probably one of the most satisfying artistic things that you can do, the big punchline is it is one of the best business things that you could ever do. That is one of like that is very rarely do you come across something like that where it is this thing that absolutely satisfies both sides, right? Because on the creative side, when you have a world, a universe that you are creating, the creative potential is like dang near infinite. How many rabbit holes can you go down if you create your own world, right? You can talk about the origin of the world. You can just throw people right into this huge conflict that you don't know what's going on. You can jump forward thousands of years. You can go to a different planet. It doesn't even have to be a planet. It could be a realm. Like there's just like, it is endless the possibilities that you can do. And on the business side, oh my gosh, as far as on a marketing side, marketing something like that is so much easier than marketing one-off singles, right? When you have a consistent story that you are saying, right? Imagine, if you will, this came to me when we were talking. Imagine, if you will, if you and I went to a movie, okay? We went to a movie, and instead of the movie telling a coherent story, every 10 seconds, it just shifted images. And the images were somewhat the same, but they were just different. With the images, there's like voices, but the voices change all the time. There's the sentences aren't really coherent. You could tell like there's some similarities between the stuff, but at the end, it was just like this barrage of all these somewhat similar images and somewhat similar dialogue. And you're like, the frick was that? Like that was so much. Now contrast that with actually going to a movie. There's a consistent story that's being told. There's a consistent dialogue. There's a beginning, middle, end. There's all the stuff that comes with the story. You tell me what is more intriguing. Obviously the movie. I understand. I can hear people in the comments, but Wyatt, music is different. Music is different. It can be fine taken in these like little slices and it have a life of its own. And I absolutely agree. Clearly, that's what Mr. 5 has been doing here his entire career, right? For the most part. Obviously, I would argue that there's far more consistency in your music than in most, like, as far as the story wise. But anyways, I say all that to say, it is one of the best things that you can do for the business side. It is one of the best things that you can do for the art side. I am interested, Austin, in, I know you're not ready to say stuff. The people would love just a little, wet the whistle just a little bit. Is there anything that you feel comfortable with saying about the Au5 story? Even just the smallest little example.
The key or the hint is in the name Au5.
We're going to have conspiracy theories in the EDM production Reddit for the next month, my guy. Oh my goodness. What is it? Is it a character? Is it a story? Is it a world? Is it a language? Is it a religion? Are you starting a religion? Are we starting cults here, Austin? What's going on?
I'll give one other hint. I've always been someone interested and intrigued in both science and spirituality throughout my life. I think that they have been... It's funny. I think we see so much like they're opposing forces, contradictions. I think that they're actually two sides of the same coin. I think that we can bridge the two, and in attempting to do so, unify so much of not just society, but also our understanding and of what reality is. And it can bring a lot of enlightenment to the world. And I think music, particularly electronic music, is my way of doing that primarily. I am I am utilizing technology, but I'm using that as a tool to express something that is non-physical, something that is more eternal. There is some non-physical, spiritual, if you may, creative force or light inside of me, inside of you, inside of all of us. And I think it's the same light. And I think when we really are able to purify that and let that golden light shine through, it awakens that same light in others. It's more of, it's this feeling of remembrance that we are something deeper, something more eternal. When I listen to music that really resonates me, it has been a cathartic experience to the point where I would consider it mystical. Something that I started doing a couple years ago, which really kind of catalyzed so much of my growth personally and artistically, has been giving myself permission and space and time when I wake up to not be of service to anyone else but myself. And what I would do with that time, a lot of the time, is I would take a walk outside pretty much immediately after waking up. I'd put on music and I would take a walk in the sunlight. And my intention would just be for maybe 15, 20 minutes. Most of the time, it would be 1 to 2 hours. And I'm outside in nature, haven't spoken to anyone yet, haven't checked social media. And I'm listening to music and letting myself be moved by it to the point where, and I also think being in nature really helps with this, to the point where I will be so high on music where my body feels like it's electrical, or I feel like I'm borderline hysterical. I can't tell if I'm laughing or crying because there's so much of this energy and this catharsis moving through me. And I think for me, it has been a really healing process emotionally. It just moved a lot of stagnation and a lot of repressed stuff that was keeping me blocked emotionally in ways that I didn't even realize. And that, I believe, is that connection with that inner light and allowing that to flow through you and shine brighter through you. Being able to create from a place like that too. Giving yourself that permission to not be influenced by what you think others want or expect of you, and really honoring the power that you have and the freedom that you have and the feelings that you have to inform you where to go and what to do. You're going to continue to cultivate and amplify your intuition. And I find that every time that I've listened to that, in spite of what I may intellectualized, or what I may have intellectually thought was best, or what others may have thought was best for me, the more I just listened to that intuition and went with it, I have always been rewarded overcoming those challenges in ways that I never would have expected. To the point where I feel like crazy synchronicities would start to happen. Someone would message me at the perfect right time, or I don't know, I almost feel like I'm becoming more in tune and more unified with the universe around me. I think mystical stuff can really start to happen when you are able to trust yourself, trust that what you're feeling is valid, not try to diminish that or make it into something else or what you think you should do. Really just getting back in touch with yourself, giving yourself that permission and that space to get back in touch with yourself and feel and express unabashedly, delusionally if you need to. Sometimes it gets to that point, but I think as long as you're not hurting others, you're in the clear and it's your right to do so. I think it's actually a service to yourself and to the entire world by doing that. I think the most brilliant and paradigm shifting and life-changing discoveries and inventions have been someone crazy, quote unquote, enough to trust themselves and their intuition in that process. And since doing that, I find that the music that I've been creating feels less, it feels more unquestionable to myself. I love this. And it actually, at that point, doesn't matter what other people think about it. I think the more you can connect with yourself through the creative process, the more other people who are open to what you have to say, what you have to express, are going to find that same connection in themselves. It may not even have to be like an explicit story, like this is a story about, I don't know, like heartbreak, and like other people can relate to that. It could be something abstract, but I think if it's genuinely coming from a place where you feel like you're connecting with yourself, it will resonate that same feeling and effect in other people too.
As I've sit here and listened to you describe that, paying attention to your intuition, being true to your intuition, and how that manifests itself into not just art, but into your relationships, your everything that's around you. I do wonder if that absolutely has to be part of the Au5 Special Sauce. And here's what I mean by that. I've made a joke about this before, and I say it again jokingly, but I kind of don't say it jokingly. You're the kind of guy that could literally make a song of you monotone, no background music, completely a cappella, saying the ABCs. And you could release it next Friday, and I swear that everyone would comment on it and be like, Au5's a wizard. He's a genius. You are just that kind of person, right? You were like the kid in school that no matter what you said, everyone laughed. You are that kind of guy, but with music. It doesn't matter what you create, what genre you are. There is just something special about you. And I have to wonder if the quality that you were talking about, which is you are true to your intuition, you listen, you are very, you're not selling out, you're so connected to yourself and what you want to create, and that attracts people. And that obviously will manifest into your art, which is why so many people love your art. Am I on the right path? Is this fair to say?
I would like to think so. I believe so. I'll take it.
Okay. Okay, cool.
It sounds logical to me. Yeah.
I mean, that's like a cheat code, dude. That is a straight up cheat code. And yet that is going to be one of the hardest things in the world for the people that are listening to implement, because that comes with a huge price. That comes with a huge, huge, huge price. I do think we need to clarify, though, you listening to your intuition does not mean that you are unreasonable. That does not mean you are not willing to take feedback from other people. It is not saying that you are not willing to discuss things or change your mind or to revisit topics and stuff like that. I think the best way to say it is you make decisions based off very pure energy, right? You were trying not to make decisions from fear. That lifestyle, dude, that comes at a pretty high cost. I mean, would you agree? I mean, it's something you got to be ever vigilant, vigilant, that you have to be very vigilant about, correct?
Yeah, man. It requires a lot of courage. Sometimes a delusional belief in oneself. But what do you have to lose? Like, okay, on a logical level, sure, you can lose time or money trying to, giving yourself permission to do all these crazy things. I think it requires a lot of self-work and self-honesty to decondition yourself from what you think is actually the best thing for you. You're not ever going to know what that is until you start listening to yourself and exploring that and finding that out for yourself. I think so often we don't even realize how much we are being influenced by external voices and influences, and how we think that those are our own beliefs, or we may be confusing that with intuition. Reactivity and fear and all of these things that like make us feel, I guess, like alert or focused or like tight, that's not intuition. That is the ego protecting itself. I think for me, one of the biggest things has been to actually embrace the wanderer archetype, the wanderer, the lone wolf. I grew up an only child, and and very introverted too. I'm much more socially adept than I used to be, but still, I love and value being alone and having space to myself. And I know for a lot of people that is something that is uncomfortable, but that like that stillness, that emptiness, that void. Space is not empty. It's full of pure potential. There's nothing manifested in there yet, but when you allow yourself to have space and silence, not interacting with people, turning off the noise, going back to the primordial nothing or emptiness, that is where the things that are below the surface inside of us get the opportunity to emerge. It's like if you're out if you're outside, better example, if you're if it just snowed and it's really sunny and you're outside and you're snowblind, you come back inside, you can't see anything. But that doesn't mean you're actually blind, and that doesn't mean that there's nothing in there. If you walk into a dark room, you feel like you can't see anything and you feel lost. That may induce a fear response, in the same way that us like isolating socially may also bring up these uncomfortable feelings that are inside of us. We need to distract ourselves. We need to connect with people. All of those things are very important, but they become much sweeter and much more real and valuable when we actually do let ourselves acclimate to the emptiness, to that darkness. Because if you're in the darkness long enough, light will eventually emerge. Metaphorically and also literally too, like perceptively. Our eyes will adjust and we will begin to see things that we otherwise weren't able to see before. And that metaphor, I think, translates to really find yourself. You need to cut the noise out, or you need to make a routine, or find opportunities, or just cut out little moments in your life to have that silence, to have that noiseless space. And I think whatever begins to arise, that's probably the thing that is going to indicate what you need to focus on and where you need to go next. And I've sort of made a habit of doing that my entire life, ever since I was a kid, because of, being pretty socially isolated. And that is, it's scary, but it's not dangerous. This is something that I've been saying in a lot of my shows. I've been doing an intermission that talks about the darkness, like space, the void, the dark. Sometimes we find ourselves in the darkness, and this is something that we feel alone in, and it feels scary and dangerous, but really this is part of the human experience. We all are in the dark at some point, because if we can just acknowledge that, like, we're not always going to be okay. If you just keep chasing the light, you're going to go blind, and you're not going to see like what dark parts of you are actually a part of you that you don't have to be afraid of. Like, it's a shadow integration experience is what I'm talking about. And the sentiment at the end is like, we're not alone in this. We're not alone in the darkness. Light will always emerge. Stars are born in the vast emptiness of space. Like, these are the points of light that coalesce and emerge through the space and the astronomical amounts of time for something to actually ignite and illuminate.
How deep do you want to go with this? Because you just raised me 50 grand, and I am ready to raise you back 150 grand. Let's
do it, dude. Let's go deep.
Because this concept, right? Because the big overarching concept, right? Light versus darkness, creation versus destruction. We're kind of using light as a stand-in term for feeling good, everything's going well, creation, you're creating things are like fantastic, right? And then we're using darkness as a stand-in term for when things are not going the best, or you don't see a clear path, or you're scared, or you're not seeing progression, right? I want to first understand that correctly. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. Well, yes. From one perspective, yeah. There's a non-biased perspective that's we can also go into too.
So the reason why I say this, right, is because this again, it depends on how deep you want to go into this, right? When you start understanding that you are neither light nor darkness, that you are both, that you are neither creation or destruction, you are both, that will absolutely blow your mind. I remember sitting on my porch with my son, having this realization of this, and me leaning over to him and I said, buddy, do you know that creating and destroying is the same thing? And he, like, his poor 6-year-old brain couldn't handle it. And he tried so hard. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, okay, well, pick something that you see. He says, okay, a house. In order to create a house, you must destroy trees, you must destroy rock, you must destroy dirt. And, you're taking energy from the people that are creating it. And by doing that, you have destroyed those things and something has brought into creation. Anytime you create something, you destroy it. And every time you destroy something, ironically, you create something, right? If we go over to the same house and we destroy it, we have now created rubble. That's still creating something. This idea that you are both, that you are chaos and structure, that you are the evil and you are the holy and the sacred, right? Oh my gosh, like it's so healing and it's so terrifying at the same time. Anyways, is that the path that you're going down? That's how I interpreted what you were talking about. But is that what you're discussing?
Not entirely, but I want to add on to that. I think life is the liminal space between the creative birth and the destructive death. And everything inside of it is just a smaller fractal, a microcosm of that timeline. It's the Big Bang to the singularity, but just on a different scale. And everything that you do inside of life is going to be a reflection of that. The darkness, having a dedicated space and time to get dark, to explore the darkness, is going to bring more light into your life. It's going to bring more purpose and intention and definition and vibrancy into your life. If you just mix all the colors together, you're going to get gray. Black and white, that contrast is, I feel like, what's necessary for there to be meaningful action, meaningful discovery.
If we were to ask everyone that was listening to this podcast, what is your darkness? Right? What is that thing that you have to walk into or that you have to not be afraid of, right? I think that we could have as many different answers with as many different people that are listening, right? Some people's darkness is just trying to create. They're terrified to create because they're afraid of what's coming out. Some people that are listening are not going to be afraid of creating, but they are going to be, the darkness for them is showing their creations to other people, right? Some people's darkness has nothing to do with creating. Maybe one of their darknesses is things that are going on, with their marriage right now, or with their kids, or with their friends, or with themselves, and traumatic events that they have. That is their darkness. And so what I find universal about what you're talking about is the more you run away from that darkness, the less opportunity you're going to have light to come into your life.
Absolutely.
Am I on the right wavelength now? Is that right?
That's a great way to put it. Bringing darkness into your life does not mean actively destroying things or like being reactive and hurting people. It is becoming aware of the feelings and the things that drive the impulses to potentially do that. Just becoming aware of what you're feeling, of what is truly happening in you in the present moment. That is the ticket to choice, because without having that self-awareness, we are at the mercy of unconscious reactivity. And that's what actually does the destruction. It's not that we have emotions that are bad. There are no bad emotions. It's that we judge them, and through judging them, we're not seeing the underlying true nature of them. We're not seeing that these are just natural things that ebb and flow, that come and go. And when we judge it, we're basically giving ourselves ignorance, and that perpetuates reactivity and actual destruction. That's unfavorable. But yeah, when we can see that, I'm angry. I think anger is a perfect example. I think there's a big misconception about anger. And I think it's because it's part of the culture for many generations. Anger is not bad. Anger is not destructive. Anger is merely a vector. It points you in a direction to align you with with your values. If something is out of line with your values, you probably will experience anger. Now, anger is not destructive. What happens when you suppress anger is destructive. That is what we don't want. When we suppress anger, when we deny what our intuition, what our emotions are trying to guide us in the right direction towards, when we deny that, we end up with resentment, which is cold anger. It's toxic. It's visceral. It's viscerally something stuck in you. Resentment, rage, and wrath. These are what happens when anger is contained and builds pressure. It becomes explosive or it becomes implosive. And I think the reason why anger is judged as a bad thing is because suppressing it in some form or another is so normalized that we almost synonymize, is that a word? We think anger is the same thing as rage or resentment, but it's not.
So me and Kylie have had, Kylie's the wife, to those who don't know. We've went to marriage counseling many times, and I hope we can normalize that. I hope that, people are like, no, that's a good thing. You should have a family doctor. You should have a family therapist. And so we went a few times, and the therapist absolutely would agree with your definition of it, with anger being you see something that is not in alignment with your values, right? According to her, it'd be fear would come first, and then anger would come second. When you see something that is out of line with your values, fear will come, and then if that continues, then anger will come, and then to kind of raise awareness, right? And if that is suppressed, like you were saying, then it can lead to, like you were saying, rage, wrath, resentment, so on and so forth, right? And so I think ultimately how that kind of ties back to what we were talking about with the darkness, right? Is that I think the concern would be people are using the term darkness for wrath, or people will be using the term darkness for evil or what have you, right? I think that was the point that you were trying to make, that's not what the darkness is. All those other things that you're saying, evil, wrath, anger, that is what happens when you completely ignore the darkness. I think darkness is another way of just saying shadow work. The idea that we all have shadows or darkness, that there's these things that we need to be aware of that could cause harm, or that could be negatively affecting us, or that we're scared of, or that we anyways, throw whatever term you want into that. And shadow work is the work of acknowledging the shadow. It's not demonizing the shadow. It's not weaponizing the shadow. It is the work of recognizing it. That is what you do when you sit in the darkness. You recognize you're in darkness, and you recognize that it's okay to walk into the darkness. It's okay to acknowledge the shadow. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I think the shadow is the part of us that we don't recognize as ourselves, or the part of us that we refuse to identify as. And these are the things that we judge because we're not really accepting it, and we're not seeing the true nature of what it is. And when we're in physical isolation, for instance, these things, the shadow in us begins to show its face more. That's just what happens. But like I said, it is a space, or the darkness. It's a clarifying force. It creates room for things to process and to move. Like if we don't have space, we're congested. Things can't move properly and rearrange themselves in the ways that are necessary for evolution and growth.
I really hope that was fulfilling and that was healing for a lot of people to hear. And I think this is a great time to bring up an example of how you walked into the darkness, and from there and in there, light started to explode. So before we started talking, we were talking about your Earthwave EP and kind of the behind the scenes of that. And you've already mentioned that in this podcast already, but you mentioned that with the Earthwave EP, you didn't have a goal about it. How is this? How could we come up with a better example of walking into the darkness, right? You don't have a goal. You're just walking in there and you're like, I don't know. I'll find out what's in there when I get in there, right? Am I correct? Would we agree that what we're talking about is the foundation of the Earthwave EP? Is that correct?
Yeah. It's stepping into the unknown with trust. If I may give a little brief synopsis of how that all came about. I think it was 2022, the end of 2022, early 2023. I was wrapping up my last album with Ophelia, Bridges Between, and I needed I needed to finish up a couple songs, and I needed a vocalist on one of these songs in order for it to be finished. And I found Sayuri in my Discord, and I heard her voice because she posted some demos, and immediately was like, wow, what an amazing, pleasant surprise. And so I hit her up, and I asked if she was interested in collaborating, and I told her that I was finishing up this album. And we tried a few different songs, we tried a few takes on some things, and I felt like I was in a state where I was very goal oriented. I knew I needed to finish this album, and there was a deadline. When this interaction was, I would say, quite transactional. It was like, okay, this is, I'm hiring you to do vocals for a song so I can finish this album, and you could be part of it. And it just was not working. And we tried I think 3 times with different songs, and I was like, we're missing each other. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna hands off for a while. And I was like, I know that I want to work with her because one of the songs that she released, Sithyaism, that's a prime example of one of the songs that really induced that feeling of catharsis in me. So I was like, she's clearly in touch with herself in an authentic way, and I know that this would be amazing to have and be part of collaboratively. And so I was like, okay, maybe let's revisit something else down the line. So I end up finishing the album, and a few months go by, and I was sketching out a song, and I was so done with making bangers, because Bridges Between is it's all bangers. Oops. But I was so done with that headspace. I was like, I need something that is me and for me. And so I was sketching this song that was originally titled Earthwave, just because I thought it sounded cool. And I sent it over to her, and it was it basically is the song that became Paradigm. The first intro verse and the instrumental part of the intro and the verse was still in the original song. And also I have you can see the inception of that in the School of Bass. There is in the Whip Masterclass, you can see how I started it from scratch. But anyway, I sent it over to her, and she was really about it, and sent over I think a verse and a chorus after in under a week, very shortly after I sent it through, and it hit hard. I was like, man, I think we just struck gold here. And that process was completely birthed out of not wanting anything to do with business. All of the stuff that I was doing to complete Bridges Between and having it released on Ophelia, I was like, you know what? No, this is just for me now. This is not for a label. This is no goal in mind. I just need to make some really vibey music. And she was right there with me. And so that song basically completed itself. The process just went on. I would send her a sketch, and she would send me back a verse, and I would expand on that and then send it back, and then vice versa. And it was just such a back and forth fluid experience. And because there was no goal, there was no extrinsic light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. We weren't chasing anything outside. It was entirely internal. We just trusted that process. And every song that we made after was wow, this is a totally new vibe, and it's the same process, and we both trust each other musically, and we both have pretty high work ethic too. So it's as soon as I got done with something, the next day she would send me vocals that sounded already polished and done, and I'm like, I've never had this kind of workflow before. By the end, I realized we had 4 songs, and I was thinking, wait a minute, these songs all have a different vibe. And this is kind of what I mean by you can make the story, or you can see the story in retrospect, the symbolism in hindsight. We realized that each of these songs, the first song, Paradigm, even lyrically, is like it's like deserty, it's like earthy, and that became I realized that each one of these songs kind of has its own like energetic elemental, or its own elemental energy to it. Paradigm is earth. The next song, Adrift, is all about like letting go and emotions and like going with the flow. That's water. Heat, which is, I would say, it's a sultry banger, is what I would call it. It's spicy. It's fiery. It's fire. Then we called it Heat. Like, that was the hook. And it wasn't called Heat originally. It was called Puff's Mountain, which sounds like it could be multiple references. It could be a volcano, but really it was because I sketched the song when I had a fever, and I was blowing my nose so much that I had a mountain of Puff's tissues next to my bedside. True story. So I called it Puff's Mountain in a delirious state, and just went with it because it was, whatever. It's funny. And she interpreted it as like something that had to do with like more tangible fire, or like something burning on a mountain. And then, so the hook was heat based off of that. And I don't know, that's a whole trippy one. I talk about that on my Instagram. I have a whole reel on how that came about. So, okay, 3 elements down. The next one, Of My Soul, Winds of My Soul, is also about, in a way, it's about releasing control and letting the wind take you. And so that was air. These all are kind of reflective, even sonically, of the different energetic elements. The last song, Muted, there is a 5th element, and that element it has many different names, but it's all describing the same thing. Spirit, the void, quintessence, space. It is a song about returning to the space. And not to get too personal and too deep, but that song was inspired by me needing to just stop the noise of the outside world. And Grace Sayuri wrote she started the song. She wrote the first verse and the instrumentation for the intro, and it was inspired supposedly by me explaining like how just worn and overstimulated I am about just, being in such a chaotic world and industry and all the expectations of me. It's really, that song is absolutely, more than all of the other ones, really just made for us. Like, we weren't even thinking about it being like having the world hear it until it was done. And yeah, we tagged it on at the end. It was funny too, because when the first 4 songs were done, I was visiting my parents and showed my parents. They love the music, but my mom, she's into like Eastern philosophies and also Ayurveda. And in Ayurveda, there are the 5 elements that are basically describe different energies of different kinds of foods. She is very familiar with like the alchemical elements. And she was like, there's the 4 elements, but where's ether, or where's space? Ether is another term for it too. And I was like, good question. I thought we were done, but I guess we weren't. And it was perfect too, because like the last song, it's ether, it's space, it's the void. That completes the 5 elemental EP. It's the golden 5 elements.
The lore is so rich.
So all of that being said, the EP finally felt complete, and we were like, well, we want to share this with the world now. And it feels like just such a beautiful story. We wrote all the songs chronologically. It's some of the most, I think, cohesive and authentic music that I've ever personally written. we were originally thinking of self-releasing it. I thought we were going to self-release it, but turns out because of Bridges Between, in the agreement that we signed, they basically suggested, they were like, hey, we would love to have, we would love to get first dibs on any music that you want to put out. So if we can have a listen before releasing it to see if it's something that we're interested in, then yeah, that would be cool. And so I was like, okay, may as well shoot the shot. We'll pitch it to Ophelia. They've been great. They've been cool. And I was pretty clear. I was like, well, here's the EP. Here's the story. There's the 5 songs. I'm down to release it with you guys, but it needs to remain exactly as is. We has to have all the 5 songs there. No alterations. I really needed to honor this creation that we made together that came from an authentic place. And I think I was like, if there's going to be any suggestions or tweaks to the image, to the vision, that I'd rather just self-release it and, pitch them some other music. But they took it in full form, unadulterated. And ironically, I didn't even realize this until they accepted it. I was like, this is so funny. I originally started interacting, collaborating with Sayuri because I wanted to finish the album that was going to be released on Ophelia, Bridges Between. And it just became a full circle moment where we had no goal or intention to release it on Ophelia, and it ended up being released on there without any alterations either. It remained pure. There are things that you can't predict, but that you just have to trust your intuition with. And for me, I didn't know where it was going to go, but I knew that it was the right way. And it led me to exactly the thing that I originally wanted in the first place.
I don't think we could have come up with a better idea if we tried, of taking all the summation of everything that we've talked about up to this point of the episode and having a very tangible example of that. Literally everything that we've talked about this far, right? You listening to your intuition, creating, walking into the darkness. What else? Having a story-based brand / piece of art, basically all the things that we have, masterfully wandering in between the art and the business. And here we are with this very tangible, very successful piece of art, which is the Earthwave EP, which incorporates everything that we've been talking about so far. Can we agree with that?
Yeah, it does.
We couldn't have planned that if we tried, dude.
See, that's what I'm saying, dude. You just follow the feeling, pull that thread, and we find, oh wow, there's so much more coherency and meaning in the journey than we thought in hindsight. Is
there anything else that you want to say about the EP?
It's beautiful.
Some might say gorgeous. We can't stay up on the mountain forever. We have to eventually move back down. And I know that there is a significant portion of people that are listening to this that want some insight into Schoolbased 2.0. And oh boy, do we have a lot to tell you eventually. Probably not right now. We want to update you and confirm that it is real, it is happening. It also occurs to me that there is a lot of people that are listening to this that don't know what the Schoolbased is, right? And this is, I have this pitch down, dude. I could say this tired, exhausted, with the half alive, being tortured. I could say this thing, right? The Schoolbased is Au5's masterclass, his sound design masterclass, his flagship sound design masterclass, where he teaches you how to make an unlimited amount of sounds, rhythms, textures, basses, blasters, leads, anything that you could ever think of. It's a sound design system that he has used for the last 15 years. He's used it on over 200 songs. We have had the Schoolbased ever since 2019. It's went through various different renditions. We've updated it here and there. But the big thing that we've been teasing, that we've been working towards, is the Schoolbased 2.0, right? And people have been asking about it. I don't even know the first time we started talking about it, like maybe 2021, 2022, right? We've been cooking on this for a long time, right? Updating it, making it better. What can you tell DAW Nation about the Schoolbased 2.0?
Schoolbased 2.0 is going to be much more comprehensive, not only in techniques, but also in knowledge. It is going to be covering the the building blocks or the science of sound, where we understand sound signal processing on a fundamental level. This is something basically more akin to an actual audio engineering, or more so a traditional course that you would find in a school. Having that foundation is really going to allow me to explain much more complex concepts, not just more complex concepts technologically through the techniques that I discovered. There's going to be substantially more new, fresh techniques that I've discovered myself that will be part of the School of Bass. Additionally, a philosophical perspective on not just sound design, but like what makes something musical? Like, how can we take the chaos and turn that into order that has meaning to it?
So that was the Au5 answer, and that is a beautiful answer. The Wyatt answer is going to complement the Au5 answer. The catalyst for me for pitching the School-Based 2.0 to you and us creating it from there was that all the information that you gave people inside the School-Based was priceless. It was amazing. And as people went through it, we saw better ways to convey that priceless information, right? We saw, this concept inside the School-Based would be so much richer. It's already rich, but it'd be so much richer if we had this other type of content to enhance it, right? Or, this concept, here's a much better way to phrase this concept. So the DNA, the foundation, the core of the School-Based has always been there. It's your sound design system has always been there. The need for the School-Based 2.0 and what we are aiming towards is taking that same system, but making it even easier to understand and implement into your specific music, right? And so the core's already been there. It's always been there. It will always be there. And this new version is just the new enhanced version to understand it in a much more clear and a much more concise way. Can we agree with that?
Yeah, exactly. It is more comprehensive, yet also more digestible too.
We have been working on this for a year. We are very busy people. We have a lot going on, right? And so it's taken a lot of work. There's also been like an enormous amount of things that have happened. I've had like 20 kids. You've moved to like 20 different places during that time. I swear every time I get a kid, you're like, no.
New house.
The School-Based 2.0, we still don't have a definitive release date to it, but we do have an update. We do have an update to the current School of Bass. What is that update called, my guy?
The update is the School of Bass 1.5.
That's right. And what is included in there?
The School of Bass 1.5 has updated lessons on all of the previous techniques, as well as a handful of new lessons, new techniques that I have been discovering myself over the past, 7 or so years. New camera that I'm filming on, much higher fidelity screen recording, and audio quality too. Descriptions of each of the courses, so it's a lot easier to understand what the module is about, and also be able to take notes and reference it, and a ton of downloadable content that pairs with each lesson.
Though that definition absolutely describes it, it doesn't even begin to describe it. So the 1.5 update is everything that he just said and more. Like, it's incredible. And if I may be so, if I could toot my own horn here, on my side, I did recode the entire School Base. I recoded the entire DAW Nation website, mostly just to support what we're doing, mostly just to support this new update with the 1.5 and with 2.0. If people already have the School Base, if they bought the School Base, it's been the same thing as it's always been. You buy it once and you get all the updates. If you've already bought the School Base, the 1.5 update will automatically be applied to you. By the way, by the time this episode comes out, it'll be live. So if you're listening to this, you have access to the 1.5 update. And then eventually when 2.0 comes out, hopefully this year, Austin, So it's this year? It's on the table. But when that comes out, then if you bought the Schoolbased 1.0, I guess is what we're calling it now, it'll just be an automatic update or an automatic upgrade to that. There's a grandfathering in. So if you're stoked about this, you want to hop in on it, of course, there are links down in the description, or you can head on over to donation.net/Schoolbased. What is an unpopular, controversial opinion that you have about the music industry?
That you need to be young to be successful or to be relevant. Such a misconception.
Such a misconception, dude. I mean, look at us. We're in our early 50s and we're crushing it. That's a joke. Don't think that we're 50, guys. Stop it.
There are kids in their 20s who feel like they're already like past ripe. It comes down to your spirit. It's like, do you have the childlike spirit? That's all. That's what you need. You know, stay in touch with that. Let go of the things that don't serve you and move into what excites you. That's the key. You could be like 90, and if you're still feeling that, you're killing it, and you can still kill it. Man, I feel like I'm really just getting started with this. Like, I feel like for like now, I'm really discovering what it is that I'm trying to say and what the whole purpose of all this is. And I'm 32. I'm going to be 33 in a couple months. And it's like, dude, I feel more aligned than I have in my early 20s.
What's one of the most useless things you spent money on for your music career?
I hate saying this. Planar magnetic headphones. I know they're super hi-fi, whatever. Dude, nah. HD 650s, been rocking these for 11 years. They're great. They're like 400 and they sound great. Yeah. Didn't need to upgrade.
So the opposite of that is, what's one of the best things you spent money on for your music career?
Basically a PR agent for social media in China. As of last year, I am, according to, I forget what their chart is. I'm way more famous in China than I am in America. I think last year I charted 28 most popular EDM artists in the country.
Okay, I misunderstood what you were saying. Now I understand. So a PR, so someone that's pushing your music in China. For some reason, I thought you meant a social media manager. No, you're talking about someone that is pushing your music in China.
I wish I had the specific term, the specific name of the role. But basically, yeah, he is like translating a lot of my posts and building engagement and pushing my music on the Chinese social media platforms. And it has been incredibly lucrative. And I've played 2 festivals and like a headlined a sold out show in China, I think of about like 2,000 people. It's another world out there, man. Those fans, they get it, they get me, and I am so grateful that I got the opportunity to find this person who's able to deliver my music and my message to China.
What a pro tip! That is the first time I've ever heard anything like that, and so that's incredible. So I know we were just talking about, you know, that you do not need to be young in order to crush it with your music, but the next question I have is, what do you envy about the new producers that are just barely coming into the scene?
I envy their naivety and ignorance in the best way possible. And what I mean by that is, when you're young, like adolescent, early 20s, you have this chaotic energy. And I also think Gen Z is, they're a different breed. And I think they're a lot more, they kind of normalize like being more open and being more like authentic with their feelings. And for me as a millennial, that's something that was much more confined and restrained early on. So I'd say what I envy is, what I mean by their naivety and ignorance is more so like they're still in a lot of ways pure. They just kind of have this unabashed tendency to just try things that are so far outside the box and make it work. Yeah, I strive for that.
What's a plugin or music production software you can't live without?
Serum. And now Serum 2. It's too good. And Rolling Sampler. Rolling Sampler is a constantly recording plugin. It's a plugin that constantly records anything that you put the plugin on, any track that you put the plugin on. So for instance, I put it on my master and I set it to record for 10 minutes and I can have that as my auto load. I can do sound design jams and just really anything that I'm hearing through the speakers is being recorded. It's a 10-minute audio buffer basically. And you can highlight and grab and drag and export audio that way, and it is a game changer for my workflow. No more do I need to create a new track, set the routing to resampling, and then hit record or any of that stuff. It is just real-time audio capturing, and the workflow is super simple and fast.
And the inverse to that question is, what's plugin or music production software that you think is overrated?
Literally any compressor that's more than like $10. Get M Compressor. It's by Melda Production. It's free, and it is so flexible. You can change you can draw in your own transfer curve. It has attack, release, and RMS controls that go all the way down to 0 milliseconds. So it can actually be a wave shaper, slew limiter, anything in between. It's a no-brainer. Don't waste your money on these like hardware emulation compressor things. I mean, hey, maybe in non-electronic music, there's a place for that, or it's sentimental for you, but in my opinion, I never use any of that stuff.
Are we gonna split the music production community in half by that? Hear me out. And I'm speaking not as a music producer, but as, someone that, mixes a lot of audio for our courses and our podcasts and stuff like that, right? I couldn't agree more. And maybe you're right. Maybe because we're in the EDM scene, we are just so the analog emulation stuff is just, if it creates any type of effect, it is so minimal that it's basically useless.
That's how I feel about it.
Oh, Austin, are we gonna get excommunicated from the EDM church? Oh no. Is this blasphemy to say it out loud? Because I do think it's overrated. I really do. In fact, I literally just redid my entire vocal processing chain for the podcast and everything, and I removed all of the emulating old compressors, and I'm like, why does it sound better? Did I just not know how to use them properly? It just sounds cleaner now, which is exactly the opposite of what they do. They make them sound dirtier and more distorted and saturated and whatnot. And I'm like, wow, this actually sounds a lot better the way they have it now. You see, are we gonna? Oh, Austin, oh.
Here's my hot take on this. We have people that are more technical. We have people that are less technical, more creative, more vibey. And it's a spectrum. Sometimes a plugin feels right to you. Sometimes it's just the way the interface looks feels right to you. I'm not throwing shade on anyone that feels like this is something that they like doing and helps them in some way, measurable, quantifiable or not. I just want to bring awareness to how easy it is for plugin companies to overcharge something and overhype it and take your money for no practical benefit on your end, is what I mean.
I'm positive there has to be some exceptions to what we're talking about right now, but by and large, some $100 compressor that has a super unique feature that is super practical and super useful and blah, 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 blah. And I have to leave room for that. But for the most part, absolutely. Absolutely. That was very controversial, and I'm very excited to see how that explodes in the industry. That was good. Bonus question, bonus round. Not planning this, shooting from the hip right now. What is one feature that you wish is inside of Ableton? You're like, come on, guys, why isn't this in here?
I'm still using Live 11, so I feel like I'm the dinosaur now. So basically, Melodyne in the audio editor. If we could have a pitch, basically a pitch tracked envelope that we can adjust and adjust the tuning of. I know that it's in Reason and it's the DAW Reason, and it works phenomenally. But just having a native pitch, even if it's just monophonic for vocals and stuff, having a pitch editor that tracks the pitch of the vocal, so you can do things pitch correction, vocal pitch correction without using any third-party plugins would be amazing.
Isn't one of those in Logic as well? Doesn't that exist in Logic?
Possibly. I have not. I stopped at Logic 9, so I don't know.
I'm pretty sure there is, but you're absolutely right. I really hope that comes, because Melodyne's great. We love Melodyne. Melodyne's it's a good old boy. The more steps that you put into your workflow process, the more brain calories it takes. And so if you just had something native, that's awesome. And then if it's really nasty and you need the more heavy lifting stuff, then we can bring out Melodyne. Well, Austin, we have wandered through the wilderness with you, and it has been such a lovely little journey. We've talked about a whole variety of things. I'm not going to go and rename all of them, but that has led us all the way here to the end, where we have to fulfill our promise. You know, we already know one of your worst decisions for your music career, but what is one of the best decisions that you've made for your music career?
I think the most important decision that I've made in my music career, for my music career, has been believing that I have inherent value and thus continuing to make what I want at the end of the day. That's how it started. I heard electronic music for the first time and I needed more. I heard things in my head and that I wanted to hear more vividly. So I explored and experimented and ended up creating what I hear in my head. And it's fulfilling to me, man. Like that was really the core of it. And I think that's really the end of it too.
One of the first things I said at the beginning of the podcast after you answered your first question is I shudder to think about what the world would be like if you didn't do that. If you would have accepted that fear, or if you would have caved to what other people would think, like how much worse, not just our community, but the world in general, that has been affected by your music would be. We wouldn't be doing what you and I are doing right now. The music that you've created wouldn't have changed the lives that it did. I think that's a fantastic answer. I am so glad you did it. I'm so glad you didn't give up. I'm so glad you persevered. I'm so glad that you leaned into it, even if at times it was uncomfortable. So 10 out of 10, Mr. AU10 out of 10. Good. Anything else you want to say before we end?
For those of you listening, you guys have inherent value and so much to bring to the world that's just under the surface, just waiting for you. And I believe in you, and you can believe in yourself too. You got this.
DAW Nation, listen to me. Say it with me. Say it slowly. Say it correctly. There is a link down in the description, that's right, of a free sample pack from Au5. That's correct. That's absolutely right. You can go to dawnation.net/heat and download it there, or again, click the link down in the description. And what else are we going to say? You know what I'm going to say. If you like this episode, then you're going to love the School of Bass. Again, it's his definitive sound design masterclass. Go ahead and check that out down in the description. It's so freaking hard to say. Or head on over to dawnation.net/schoolbase. And if you really enjoyed this episode, please, I beg you, tell people, tell someone. You see someone, say something. Go leave us a review. I forgot to mention this in other podcast episodes. You can leave us a review on Apple Music, on Spotify. You can leave comments on episodes inside of Spotify. You can leave comments on the episodes on YouTube. Anything. Just let us know if you like this. Go tag us in an Instagram story. I would love to see that. Leave a comment. Do whatever you need to. We'd love to hear from you over there. DAW Nation, it's like almost midnight, and I'm an old man, and I gotta go to bed. Also, fun fact, by the time this came out, the day before, I had my vasectomy. I don't know how to end these things. Peace.